All right, everyone. We are live again on YouTube, and this time our speaker is Sharena Rice, and she has actually been in uh, uh, a few different things that aren't exactly the traditional tech type of thing. For one, she's done some environmental stuff. She's done some stuff with. All right, everyone. We are live again on YouTube, and this time our speaker is. I forgot to mute the live stream because sometimes I have the live stream going on so I can see, if anyone has comments or questions. So I apologize for that. But yeah, so Sharena has done some things that the average tech person doesn't consider. We usually just think, Google, Microsoft. Uh, obviously there's a lot of tech applications outside of just big tech. So Sharena, welcome. Would you like to tell us more about that stuff?
Sure. I would most accurately describe myself as a cybernetician, which is a person who works on interactions between living systems and observing systems. And all of the tech startups that I have worked on involve humans and machines, from automotive software for pedestrian behavior prediction to wearable technologies to remote patient monitoring to a platform for systems change. And I recently graduated with my PhD in neuroscience from the University of Michigan. So then all of the startups that I've been building and advising have involved humans and machines. And I have co-founded this company called Intvo, which does pedestrian behavior prediction with computer vision. At Intvo, what I did was work a lot on the strategies of how our system would function. Many times I would take the perspective of the car or the infrastructure where a car was driving. And then I would ask myself questions like, okay, if I was an animal that happened to evolve to do this task well, then how would I do it? How would my brain process this to make sense of the story? And then I would suggest analogous systems of sensor processing to handle this problem, whether that was increasing the frame rate of the camera if the car is moving at a high speed so that it could handle the situation and so that it could respond using its computational power efficiently, or putting more or less computational weight on certain parts of the road scene to give a risk assessment depending on the situation at hand. And what I want to do in this lifetime.
You said.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Scotty.
Oh no, I was just kind of following along, acknowledging. So please continue.
All right, and what I want to do in this lifetime is invert as much suffering as I can with technology. Well, I'm currently on the job market and ready for the next chapter of this, but it is an exciting time thinking about what is possible using the power of technology and thinking through it a little bit differently than what may be considered typical.
All right. Yeah, and then when you're talking about this stuff, I had a couple of things kind of pop up in my mind. For one, kind of going out of order, I guess. But well, maybe it's kind of in order. But the stuff you're talking about, with driving, if I'm a species that evolves into being able to drive, what am I thinking about? And it kind of got me thinking about the Will Smith movie I, Robot, because when you're talking about human and machine, the function, there's a lot of examples in the movie following, I think it was the 3 laws of robotics, I think is the name. And basically, kind of saying every every robot has to follow those 3 laws in a certain order. And then, of course, those of us who have seen the movie see how that plays out. And a lot of it does make sense. The robots do feel like they need to do, they are commanded to do things in a certain way. But even then, within the 3 laws, they can interpret it differently depending on their programming and how much AI and free will they have, or, do they have free will because it's AI? And then, you're talking about some of the more automated stuff. How much brain power, or I guess processing power, are we using? It's kind of like, so until I mention this specifically, most of us are probably just casually breathing. Now maybe some people are like, oh wait, now I notice myself breathing. So keep breathing in and out. But most of us don't think about that, and that's because our brains have evolved to simply just do it to stay alive. Our hearts just continue beating. But right now, I'm actively thinking, okay, where am I taking this conversation next? And some of us were able to talk a little bit more on autopilot. We're just used to this. Some of us, for example, I can reach over, here's a slinky, but that's something that generally requires a little bit more processing power, a little bit more brain power than just I'm breathing. And I just naturally have this rhythm of breathing while I'm talking. So, obviously a lot of these things, the average listener is probably thinking, oh man, that's actually not as scary because, you know, some people might be thinking driving is scary. And to be fair, some of our road systems are not exactly the best, but it does sound like a lot of your interest in tech, like you said, trying to avert as much suffering as possible. It's kind of like in iRobot. How do we create robots, AI systems, algorithms, whatever we call it? How do we create things that make life better? And then, of course, the question is, how do you apply it? Sometimes with driving, in your case, it's a little broader. It sounds like humans and machines, humans and functions. I guess is that the right way to describe all this?
Yeah, I think that there is a big potential when it comes to what humans are not good at that machines are really good at, and focusing our efforts on those aspects of automation. So for example, a human may have a hard time paying attention to the right things at the right times when it comes to driving or various other things that involve high speed and potential for making mistakes, just because a person may be focusing on one thing where there's a danger happening in another direction or from another modality. But the thing is that a machine, if it is specifically trained to do something really well, because a machine, it's not going to lose attention, then that is a very useful thing. But also when it comes to things such as prosthetics, well, some humans, they're not very good at moving their arms that they don't actually have. But if we were able to interface this with their nervous system really well, then that can help bridge the gap in terms of translating signals from a person to a machine very nicely.
Yeah, because that kind of got me thinking. There's kind of like when you're a kid, you're not very coordinated yet, or as an athlete, you might feel like, oh, if say so, I'm right-handed, I might not have good control of my left hand. And I remember in college, working out and eventually building the muscle to start feeling like, oh, I can control my left hand exactly how I want in basketball. But then obviously, I don't know if this counts, but Parkinson's, tremor, stuff like that. I feel like there might be some connection there, but beyond that, and I'm sure I'm blanking on all the right names, but ALS, for example, I think that's one of the conditions where sometimes someone has less control over a certain arm or body part than they would like, right? I guess, is that one of them?
Yeah, when it comes to things such as neuromodulation, also, that there is a ton of potential to take signals and to be able to interpret them through systems, and then it becomes a coordination where both natural intelligences and an artificial intelligence are combined to make life better for someone. And it becomes a lot less scary too if you think about it that way. And
Yeah.
if there can truly be a good bridge there. And it's becoming better and better all the time.
Yeah, I feel like, this is just kind of the next step in, for example, a cane. Canes have evolved over time. Um, and then if we look at pacemakers, there's also some AI, or I don't know if there's AI in a pacemaker, but there's programming in a pacemaker to identify, what's the heart rate, how do we adjust it? So it's kind of like putting those two things together. Here's something that we imagine, a cane, which is just immobile, it's just, one thing, but then kind of maybe give it some additional, programming, just like our phones have that. our cars can show us what's behind us so we don't crash into things. It's just giving it extra abilities to make us to make things easier for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I
So
guess
that can improve lifespan, it can improve quality of life, it can prevent accidents.
yeah, I can imagine for anyone who's 70 and up, maybe not even 70, but just in general thinking, wait, if I can get back to running the way I was between 15 and 25, suddenly the quality of life improves so much. Not even just running, just being able to walk and move around easily. So yeah, that'd be amazing. I guess, did this come from some kind of impact in your life with tech, or or maybe conversely, there was a conflict in your life with tech?
I think that the conflict really happens when the human usability component is left out of the loop. Now, this may be the case when it comes to just data entry and how that works in the first place.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started analyzing electrical signals from neurons in a neuroscience lab, I organized the data in a color-coded way and had this beautifully labeled spreadsheet that made a lot of sense to me, and it was well organized in a regular repeating pattern.
Mhm.
But the thing is that even though I put a lot of thought into it, my advisor at the time, he could not make sense of what I set up unless I explained it a lot. So I had to learn to organize things in a way that's generalized to other people too. And so I have seen cases where someone has built a prototype of things like a monitoring system or a pipeline of automation where they know how to use it, or it has to work a certain way that they would create their system that works really well for them, but it would quickly break if someone else tried to use it, or if someone else tried to think through how it would process things. So
Yeah.
then it's not robust to human thought and behavior. And similar things happen with just plain code. So I think that usability and design of technologies, it needs to be well thought, and it can't really be sacrificed for the sake of speed, just getting things done to have them done. But that great design, it can prevent small mistakes that eventually compound to bigger mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of like you're talking about, say, brain signals, electronic signals. A lot of people might not know, because I didn't know this about our brain for I don't know, a long time, but a lot of our human body does operate with electrical signals. We don't think of it that way because we're not seeing, wires, but our brains do operate in those ways. And for someone scanning through your spreadsheet, maybe seeing here are larger numbers marked in red, here are smaller numbers marked in green. A computer often kind of acts in the same way, kind of going through, here's a bunch of numbers, or here's a lot of different electronic signals. Maybe here are the ones that would correspond to red, so go right. Here are the or just stop, like a stop sign or a stoplight, a red light, and then here's green, that means go. And obviously that's where humans, we have the ability to just say, oh, okay, I make my own decisions. What's my priority? Run the red light to save time. Maybe I'm trying to get to the hospital, so okay, that's understandable. Or no, do not run the red light no matter what. We must obey the law, absolutely. And obviously that's where you can, like in iRobot, we can program each AI or robot or machine to say, okay, what are some priorities? We can rank the priorities and help them decide, when there's two things that seem to be equal, which one takes precedence. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess, kind of, now obviously in your case, your information, it looks good, but then someone else is thinking, oh, I'm not sure what it meant exactly. I guess that highlights, there's always that point of time where here's all the information, we know the conclusions, the answers, but then we need to convey them. So I guess, sounds like that was a really key moment for you, realizing, okay, it seems like I've done the right thing because he's not objecting to it. I just need to make sure I convey it so he can confirm for himself that my research is on point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess was this.
Sometimes with little checkpoints to see, okay, at this stop point, has everything from there and earlier been
Yeah.
done in a correct and robust way
Yeah.
to prevent human errors as well.
Yeah. And I guess was this part of your PhD just recently, or was it earlier in undergrad?
Oh, these kinds of things I've seen I've seen pipelines in both
Okay.
where okay, when I was a postback, that's when I did this neural signal thing with inputting data into an Excel spreadsheet in this color coded way.
Mhm.
And then eventually, when I was in grad school, I was putting various systems together, and so were other people in my lab. And sometimes there would just have to be a very precise list of instructions in order to make it work and to have it done the same way every time. Otherwise, we get
Yeah.
a lot of noise that drowns out the components of behavior and brain data that we're trying to collect.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like some of the same struggles, we might grow and learn a lot, but some of these same struggles from undergrad carry over into, in your case, post-bac and then your PhD. Uh, it's just that, it's the same process. So I guess now that you've gotten your PhD, you've advised some startups, you're working on one yourself. How do you, and obviously the stuff you're doing, I mentioned iRobot, which takes place, I think, 2035, but the stuff you're doing, some of it, a lot of us might be thinking, whoa, that's real right now, because we might not even realize the research is happening and some of the successful tests are being conducted already. So if you want to include that within the future of the world, you can, but just in general, how do you see tech impacting that, just moving forward?
I think of technology and analytics as tools that can make us more of what we already are, which will amplify the best and or the worst aspects of human nature, really, depending on how it's used and how it's designed and how it's implemented. But I'm optimistic that if people think through how tech is created, not just the how, but the why and the what, and questioning the different elements of it, then technology can really, really help people the most that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like one of the really interesting things with analytics, we can start figuring out a little more clearly, uh, you know, do I sleep better on my right side or my left side, face down, face up, whatever other sleeping positions there are. And, I think a lot of people would really benefit from that. So yeah, the tech and analytics, it's really useful. Obviously the stuff you're talking about, it's a little bit less oriented around sleeping, but more motion, I feel like, and that's where we get into athletics. Is this player better at going left or right, or should the player react in this way or that? And it's a lot like saying, well, does this team tend to play more aggressively or and offensively, or are they more defensive? So, uh, you know, obviously, that's kind of a big question, future of the world. But I guess for your community, something that's a little closer to who you are, what would you like to see for them?
Yeah, one of the things is that I have to say about the last point also is there's the big question of what do we try to optimize for when it comes to technology? Do we try to optimize for productivity? Do we try to optimize for safety? Do we try to optimize for this next semester, for example, or for a longer haul? So a lot of it has to do with size and scope as well.
Yeah,
And as for what I hope to see in our community is fewer us versus them paradigms and senses of separation between people, but for the seams between disciplines to disappear. So for example, that biology and computer science aren't seen as separate disciplines, but they are more combined as the world is an interdependent co-arising of systems. So then with that, writing good code, it would not, ideally, it wouldn't be considered separate from design, nor should the hardware be considered completely separate from the software, even if the software can run on multiple different kinds of hardware. So then for the elements to come together, it does help to think about the components that you are focusing on. but also how it plays a role in the broader system, which can give a greater sense of meaning and connection, where you can see, okay, I might be sort of a bricklayer sometimes, or feel like one in terms of coding this one element. But it is something that can go far beyond myself in terms of zooming into that and also seeing, okay, how does this relate to the bigger project? How does this relate to the broader community as well? And then this kind of thinking of zooming into and out of the system, it can help with solving problems that may not be seen otherwise in integration.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like an automatic door. You know, I walk close enough, it knows to open, or maybe my car, I turn the keys or I push a button and the electrical signals say, hey, start the ignition. Um, I think, the stuff you're saying, it's really a lot like that, just building on it and doing different motions rather than opening a door. Maybe it's, raising this arm or lowering it. So, you know, it's a lot of different applications. Um, Obviously, applying this to the future, your community, stuff like that. Um, I think in the end, we also do want our participants to get a sense of how this applies to them specifically. So what would you like to say to them? What do you want them to gain?
Yeah, my hope is that they gain a greater sense of what's possible through technology, beyond just thinking about programming or just thinking about what you can do with numbers. To start conversations and reflections on how we can turn stories into numbers and numbers into stories to make the world a better place.
Yeah, it's kind of like when we were kids, color by numbers, I think. Those books, like here, color all the ones a certain color, the twos and threes a certain color, and then oh look, it's a giraffe. So yeah, I've never heard it described that way, turning stories into numbers and numbers into stories. Well, actually, I say that, but maybe I have, and it's not coming to me. But no, I think what you said, it really makes sense. So I think for everyone who, if you're trying to find out more about this stuff, if you're thinking I want to get a PhD, or just, oh, here are applications of tech and analytics that I didn't consider before, we definitely encourage you to check the video description below. You can find some information on how to connect with Sharena. Obviously, if you want to be part of this event, then you can do that as well. But our main thing is we just want you to be able to say, hey, what about this talk interests you, and if there's something you want to talk to Sharena about and find out more, then how do you reach her, and start discussing maybe a potential career, passions, hobbies, finding ways to combine all these things, what you're good at with what you enjoy, and just in general building something even more special for yourself and for others. So with that, Sharena, would you like to close out with any final words?
Yep. And my words are that the dots, they tend to connect backwards. You'll look back at your life and say, you know what? I didn't think I knew what I was doing, but I just continued doing things. And now looking back, well, it all makes sense what I should be doing going forward. And then 5 years later, then you'll say, wait, back when I thought that I knew what I was doing, I didn't actually know what I was doing, but I kept doing things. And now that I look backwards again, the dots connect backwards. And now I know that even though I didn't actually know what I was doing, I'm pretty glad that I tried a bunch of things on the way. And so there we are with all of our navigations through life, through tech, sometimes through philosophy, sometimes through science, and sometimes through other things that help us make sense of the world and give us meaning. So thank you for being here. And thank you, Scotty, for this live stream.
Thank you, Sharena, for joining us. And yeah, anyone who hears that, we hope this has helped you. Definitely reach out to Sharena if you have more questions, if you want to find out more. Just in general, if you feel like you're not sure where you're going in life, we've all been there at some point. We've all processed it differently, but I'm sure we're all willing to help you process it in your way. It's just a little bit like Hansel and Gretel, just kind of, you keep moving forward, and eventually you say, all right, maybe look back and figure out, oh, that's where I came from. So, you know, look back every now and then, encourage yourself with where you come from, you know, how far you've come. And that way, if you're looking at how far out your destination is, you're reminded of how much you've already done, and hopefully that encourages you. So, Sharena, thank you again. It was great having you, and we look forward to bringing you back in the future.
All right. Thank you so much.